2026, you heard it here. We have gaveled in for the first meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville's fiscal year starting on July 1. Greetings, yes. I am the Rotary Club President. That was my first time to ring that bell as the official club president, and I've been up since 2 a.m. thinking about how to best do that. So I hope everybody heard it. I hope I can bring a lot of energy and excitement to the club, and I'll be asking each and every one of you to do the same with me. And as your club president, I am also serving at the mayor's pleasure of the city of Louisville. I am your interim chief executive officer of the Bella Louisville Riverboats. You will hear Mayor Greenberg refer to me as an admiral. I said, sir, reserve that for the licensed captains and so forth. He said, but you have 3 vessels. I said, yes, I do. So, Al Cornish, thanks for being here. I think you can call me Admiral Barber anytime you want to. All right, providing our invocation today is one of my longest time friends and one of my spiritual leaders when I found my way in the early 80s. Would you please come to the podium, Rotarian Tracy Holliday, for our invocation.
Thank you, Barbara. And I don't think there's going to be any problem with getting energy and excitement in the club with you in charge. Let's pray. God of justice, we pray this day for all those in positions of authority and judgment. Grant them wisdom to discern truth rightly and compassion for those impacted by their decisions. Grant them decisiveness, tempered with humility. Grant them, we pray, a heartfelt desire to consistently seek what is fair, just, and reasonable. Give them strength for the task before them and an unwavering commitment to equal justice under the law for all. And may all of us, in the decisions and actions of our daily lives, seek justice, promote peace, and love our neighbors as ourselves. Amen. Amen.
All right, thank you so much, Tracy. And now for our guests, just so you know, we top off each of our meetings with someone who leads us as a group in the Pledge of Allegiance and our 4-way test. Please welcome fellow Rotarian, Wu. Thank you.
Thank you, President. All right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now for the 4-way test.
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Yes, I couldn't remember if Wu's last name was Smith, which is my last name, or not, and I thought that was too much of a coincidence. So this is Wu Smith, Operations Manager, and she's also Principal at Terracon, one of the Rotary Fellowship, our Rotary Leadership Fellows. Thank you, Wu. All right, now, Rotarians, it's your time in the spotlight. Jump on over here to the microphone to your right, to my left, line up behind our President-elect, Craig Mooney, and introduce your guest. Now, as you all know, I like to be a little pedagogical from time to time. Yes, and Rotarians, you're going to introduce your guest with their name, their role, and their organization. And I know you want to tell everybody all the great things about them, but Rotarians, as we silence our phones and silence our voices at our tables where we're seated, out of respect for all the speakers and each other at the table, let's meet our guest. You're on.
President Barbara, fellow Rotarians. As President Barbara mentioned, my name is Craig Mooney, and I am the president-elect of our club. Today, I would like to introduce my guest, Justin Carey, Vice President of Business Development for Income. Justin.
And guests, please stand as you are being introduced. Thank you.
President Barbara and fellow Rotarians, I'd like to introduce my guest, Al Cornish. She's the COO of Closing the Gap Consulting, and that's an organization that works to assist in creating healthy workplace cultures. And Al is a longtime VP at Norton Healthcare, a former chair of the Kentucky Rotary Festival. He serves on dozens of boards.
All right, thank you so much. Fellow Rotarians, remember to introduce yourself before you introduce your guest.
Hi, President Barbara. I'm Susan Zepeda, and my guest today is attorney and super connector, Pamela Greenwell.
I am back at the mic. Who's Smith? President Barbara. My guest is Sarah Barlow. She works at Terracom with me. She's our new client development specialist.
President Barbara, I like the sound of that. President Barbara, I just keep saying it.
Thank you.
I'm Renee Brown, and my guest is my nephew, Juan Clark. He's in financial services and management.
Hi, President Barbara and fellow Rotarians, Natalie Pasquenda with Children's Advocacy Centers of Kentucky, and I'd like to introduce Elia Fox, the President and CEO of Family Children's Place here in Louisville, who serves as our local CAC and other services for families and children.
Good morning, President Barbara and fellow Rotarians. Clayton Rogers with Central Bank and Trust. My guest today is Trish Osborne, VP of Private Banking at Central Bank and Trust, former chair of the Kentucky Derby Festival, and current chair of the WLKY Bell Awards.
President Barbara, Nick Garner, the MITRE Corporation. I have two guests with me today. My first guest is my dear friend of 20 years, Joe Canadas. He is a group lead also at the MITRE Corporation, visiting from Boston. And I also have with me my dear friend Jordan Walker, who is front of house at Pizza Lupo, and then also occasionally fellow board member at the Louisville Tool Library.
President Barbara, my name is Erica Fields, and hello, fellow Rotarians. My guest is my wife and my business partner, Patience Fields. She's in.
Yes, and thank you. Erica Fields is the former club president in Minneapolis. Yes.
President Barbara, fellow Rotarians, my name is Matthew Boone Gardner of Boone Gardner Landscape. My guest today is my dear friend Teresa Carpenter Beans, who owns Essential Media, is a wonderful artist with a great display right now at the KMAT Museum, and she happens to be childhood best friends with our speaker today. So.
President Barbara, fellow Rotarians. My name is Heather Cash. I'm with the Community Foundation of Louisville, and my guest is a fellow colleague of mine, a new colleague, Sarah Lipke O'Hare. She's our Director of New Fund Development at the Community Foundation.
All right, thank you so very much. All right, fellow Rotarians, you have set the bar so high. You all did those introductions perfectly this week. Thank you so very much. And the last guest that we'll be introducing is my personal guest today, a longtime friend that I met in 2016. She is the founder and the CEO of Safe Path Communities, Paulisa Thomas. All right, so I'm going to continue a few traditions that President Ken and other presidents have started in years past, and then, yes, I'll create a few new ones as we go along. The first thing I want to do is make a real point that if you were introduced today, and even if you're a guest and someone forgot to introduce you, all guests, please go over to the What is Rotary table. You see the lovely, fabulous, ever-effective club executive director, Delene Taylor. And there will be folks there to do a 5 or 6 or 7 minute introduction about what is Rotary. And on your tables, there is a handy-dandy handout that shows you. Paulisa, would you hold that up, please? Yes, I'll be calling on volunteers through the whole meeting. Thank you very much. Guests, that tells you how you can join Rotary and live your life with service above self, as each of us has chosen to do. Now, we've had a lot of movement in this club in the last year. A lot of people coming in, a lot of people going out for whatever reasons. If you have joined this club at any point in the last 365 days, all right, please stand up. We want to recognize you for being new, for coming back to the meetings. I love that. And the reason we like to do that is we want everybody who stayed seated, talk to these folks that have been in the club and try to hop around these tables a little bit. That's one new thing we're going to try. Renee, we've talked about it, but I don't know if folks are going to jump in and do this with us or not. Stay seated where you are for right now. But next week, Walt, my first challenge is, can you actually sit at a table that you didn't sit at this week, maybe with somebody different? Yes. Guess they're laughing because that's one of the little known things about Rotary. We tend to come to these meetings. Well, you know what, Kent? It's like in life. We show up, but we tend to gravitate toward the familiar. I'm asking y'all, come on. Let's try some new things this year. I think we can do it together. Now, here's what I get to do. Y'all, bear with me. I want to make sure I introduce our new club directors, our returning club directors, our club officers. That's going to be a total of 14 people. Y'all with me? 14 people. Typically, at this meeting, we only introduce the first-time club directors. Well, I made an executive decision around midnight last night, and I said, heck no. If I got 4 directors coming back in for the second year of their 2-year term, they deserve to be recognized. Are y'all with me? Yeah. Okay. And they deserve to get another fabulous fake gold poison A pen to wear. Because they may have lost the one that President King gave them last year. Then, after I introduce those 14 people, they're not coming to the microphone, they're going to stand in their place, okay? Then I'm going to introduce our Rotary Fund of Louisville leadership team and the directors of that. So, here we go. Now, when I call your name, I want you to stand at your seat. And if you all can just keep eating, I see some of y'all are still eating, no clapping until I give you the go-ahead, all right? Or we'll be here all afternoon trying to do these 14 names that I'm going to try to remember. Now, in doing that, let's see here. Let's start with past president, Ken Salvaggi. I know it's not on the script, but I got to recognize you, buddy. Stand up. Past president, because one of the best darn presidents we ever had. So now, Craig Mooney, please stay standing. Okay, Craig, you've got the first volunteer job following Paulisa. Take this, and you got to find the right pins, buddy. You got to give Ken his past president pin, okay? So come on, got your eyeballs rolling. And if you'll look in the top right corner, if you held that box correctly, you'll see your pin, Craig Mooney. Okay, stay standing, keep moving. Go back over there and find Gary Dryden. Gary Dryden's going to be our new treasurer. Okay, no round of applause yet. And now you can hand that box to Gary. Gary, you got to go find, you have to find Jay Mallory. Where's Jay Mallory? Is he in the room? If he's not in the room, okay, send that pin back up here. And then, because Jay Mallory is returning as our secretary. Craig, we got to make sure we get in that pin. There you go. Okay, stay with me a moment, Craig. This is how it happens. Ken Salvaggi had me doing everything at these meetings. Oh, it's all right. Now, Gene West is going to serve as my past president advisor. Is Gene in the room? All right. And Lacey Smith shows up late, so I'll call his name. Everybody say hi, Lacey. Hi. Don't worry, he is not on the board of directors. We're in good hands. Okay, now, our at-large directors who are returning for their second year of a 2-year term on the Rotary Club of Louisville Board of Directors are Kristen Boone, Steve Jester, stand up so Craig knows where to send the pins, Jeff Underhill, I saw you come in, and Kent Whalen. All right? You all get club director pins. Jeff, thank you very much. Make sure Craig sees you. And then, as Craig hands Jeff Underhill his pin, Craig will turn around, and as I call your names, the next 4 people are beginning their 2-year term as a brand new Rotary Club of Louisville director. That would be Chris Burke. Are you here? I saw Nick Garner come in. Nick, stand up. Dr. Shawani Jett, are you in the room? Dr. Jett's not in the room. Mackenzie White, I know you're here. There you are. Okay. Hey, Nick, take that pen from Craig and go back and give Mackenzie hers. I might need Craig up here at the front of the room. All right. And then, after Nick hands that pen to Mackenzie, you're going to turn left and go over there to Renee Brown. Okay? They're fighting over who gets to give Renee his pen. I knew it. Okay, Renee Brown, as chair of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, has a seat on the Rotary Club Board of Directors. Renee, give me your pen. Okay, round of applause for our Board of Directors. All right, thank you, President-elect. Had no idea how unwieldy that was going to get. Now, let's talk about and introduce and make sure we all know who are going to be the board leaders and officers for the Rotary Fund of Louisville. For those of you who are new to the Rotary story, this is our foundation, our local foundation. We also are affiliated and support the Rotary International Foundation. But locally, we have our own leadership that helps us manage the funding for our service projects. And for the coming year, our Rotary Fund Board Chair will be none other than the immediate past president, stand up please, Ken Salvaggi, one of the best darn presidents this club ever had. Ken, you're going to have to get used to that because you're going to get introduced that way almost at every meeting, all right? Then I will be serving as the chair-elect of the fund board. That is by virtue of my position as your current president. And then Craig Mooney will be the new vice chair of the Rotary Fund Board. Y'all see how this works? It's succession planning really at its best. I love the way this is set up. Now, we got to figure out who is going to be the treasurer. Anybody got an idea? Stand up, Gary Dryden. There you go. And then, anybody want to guess who the secretary is? I think he's AWOL today, but it's Jay Mallory. So, thank those folks. Now, Ann Monell had such a wonderful 3-year experience on her first term. The bylaws on the Rotary Fund Board allow you to serve a second term. Ann called me when word got out that I was recruiting all the leadership for the club. She said, could you consider me for another 3-year term? Ann Monell, are you in the room? Stand up, Ann, if you're okay. Well, they out there then. Okay. President Ken, you're going to get all these people to show up at your fund board meetings, all right? Now, we have returning Rotary Fund board members. They are called members at large. Michelle Black-White, you're in the room, I saw you. And Susan Zepeda, please stand up. All right? Now, President Ken, and as president of the club, and then as the chair-elect, with Lori Flannery as the immediate past chair of the Rotary Fund of Louisville, they were able to work with that and work with the board directors last year and wrote an amendment to our bylaws. Yep, I told the justice we were going to do a little bit of business before she got up here. This is the little bit of business, okay, ma'am? So, what happens? Very exciting news. We get to add 3 new at-large members to the Rotary Fund Board because, as you can see, it was too much of the club's board and the fund board, the same people making all the decisions. So here's our 3 new members. Das Rupre, he signed up for 1 year. We're going to have staggering terms. Is Das in the room? Harry Lewis Seeger, stand up. He's got a 2-year term, guaranteeing rotation. And Rencha Allen has a 3-year term. So that concludes the introductions of the Rotary Fund Leadership and Board of Directors. Okay, I'm pleased to announce it's 12:21 so far. We are right on the money on time. Now the trick is going to be if I can manage to do in 5 to maybe 4 minutes, 6 minutes maybe, the president's remarks. Deline and President Ken told me 1 year ago, get ready because at the first meeting in July, you will make your inaugural address. Well, I forgot all about that till 10:45 last night. So, here we go. Fellow Rotarians, as your president, I first want to point out something very important to me personally and professionally. It is the Rotary magazine. And this is our new Rotary International president. If you have not met him through videos, if you've not met him by reading your Rotary magazine or your emails, please let me introduce you virtually through this magazine, our Rotary International president, and his name is Olayinka Babalola from Nigeria. We call him Yinka. Round of applause. I've watched all of his speeches, I've read his letters, I've read his speeches, and he and I are in complete alignment on life's philosophy. And I'm going to share a teeny bit of that with you so you will know how I would like to set the stage for all of us together to roll into this Rotary year so we can create lasting impact. That is his theme. Rotarians, we are expected to participate in and create lasting impact. And lasting impact focuses on sustainability for many decades to come, personal growth that's reaching inside yourself, and initiating change within yourself, because Yinka says, Rotary works when you work. Rotary works when each of us works. Rotary works for you as much as you want it to. The question is, are we working for Rotary? I want you to think about that. And then he says, we are together going to reach inside ourselves, find out what inspires us, and create lasting, sustainable change all across the world. It emphasizes the true impact comes from intentional, consistent, and purposeful action. And I believe we each find our purpose in life from our service to others. What a more fabulous place to do that than together with like minds, with more diversity than you can possibly imagine, coming together for the common good for the largest number on planet Earth. So reach inside and find your greatness within, you all. That's what I want to say to you. I couldn't understand why Cliff Elgin put this in my hands several weeks ago. He handed it to me one day. Cliff has been in the club as long as anybody, as far as I know. He said, now don't read it now, take it home. Well, I took it home and I opened it up. And I thought, what does Cliff want me to do? Cliff says, why don't you talk about the greatest when you become the president? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, talk about all the things that make Louisville great. He says, talk about the great arts, talk about the great sports, talk about the great people, talk about the great businesses. He says, and don't forget, talk about the great logistics. Talk about the fact that 60% of Americans live within 600 miles of Louisville, Kentucky. And I thought, can I talk about the great steamboat? I had to throw that in. Okay. He said, talk about the great restaurants. And he said, Barbara, just think about it. You could craft a message around the greatest of all time. And I said, Cliff, are you talking about Muhammad Ali? He said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know what? We should embrace where we've been. We should acknowledge what we've come through. And we should all band together. We may not all agree. We may not all agree on how we want to get where we're going together, but just embrace the differences. And I said, Cliff, that reminds me about Muhammad Ali. And he says, really? Did you know him? I said, I got one picture with him and that's all. Okay? He said, you really do? I said, I do, but that's not my point. Fellow Rotarians, I ask you this. How is it that one man lives 74 years by 6 core principles? 6 core principles. That's right. Confidence, conviction, dedication, and giving, respect, and spirituality. That's the life Ali was living. And when he passed on June 3rd, 10 years ago, why is it that 25,000 people came from everywhere to walk through the doors of our Ali Center? How is it that 235 media passes were handed out? How is it that more than 100,000 people lined the streets of Louisville? How is that possible? How did he do that? He stood for what he believed in, and he believed in the humanitarian effort, the service above self, the same thing we believe in Rotary. He just got there a little differently. because he was gifted with a dance in the ring and a box knockout that people couldn't beat. He gave up that gold medal for what he believed in. Yes, he did. Are you willing to stand for what you believe in? I am. So fellow Rotarians, I say to you, think about Ali. Think about that. Think about the 84,000 rose petals that laid across the entrance to the Cave Hill Cemetery, placed by an artist teacher in our community to welcome whom she thought was the greatest of all time to his final resting place, according to her belief. Maybe not his, but according to hers. Remember, we are going to acknowledge our differences, embrace where we are, and band together. So how in the heck are we going to do all that? And I've got the last 2 minutes to say all this, Rick. We are going to do this by finding our Rotary rhythm. Yep, stay with me. I want everybody in here to grab the concept of being a rhythm maker. You know who you are, and you know who the rhythm breakers are. You know when you walk in a room, do you make the rhythm or do you break the rhythm? You got to think about it. And rhythm makers create lasting change. I've seen it over and over and over. So, we're going to be value-driven leaders with a vision. I focus on hope, helping other people every day. Graham, you like that? Hope, helping other people every day. It's my Barbaraism acronym. And success, how are we going to know we got there? How are we going to recognize it? You will recognize it when you look in the mirror and you say, success is a state of mind I achieve by enriching the lives of other people every day. Every Rotarian, every day, in every way. I believe that we can do this together. Now today is signing day. Yep, I don't have signature cards for everybody, but ma'am, I was thinking about having everybody sign up to play in the Super Bowl, because I think every day is Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah, you're going to get in the game and get on the field. I want to be down there with the other 21 people taking all the hits, because it's on the field where the action takes place. While 100,000 people eating hot dogs and drinking beer, yelling and screaming at us, Trish, trying to tell us what to do. So, 6 words that define me. I'm prepared to leave you with this. Authentic, believable, connected, determined, energetic, and fun. I try to be those things. I try to be them every day. I ask you, what are the 6 words that you want this world to define you by? And fellow Rotarians, if you do this, there will come a day where you'll look back and you'll say, I was there. I was there that day. I don't know what she said. I don't even remember what it was. I just know she kept jumping around and moving her hands a lot. And she said something about looking in a mirror, but I can't remember what I'm supposed to do. Well, you're supposed to have a conversation with yourself. That's what I want you to do. Is Rotary working for you, and are you working for Rotary? All right? It's just that simple. You know, I promise you, I will be my best, whatever that is, Robert, on any given day. Indeed, I'm going to bring my best to every room, every sidewalk, every place I go. And I tell you what, I will give each and every one of you the best I've got to give. That's the least I can do, because you believed in me and put me in this position. Some days will be better than others. So, my story, it was 1990 and I was 33 years old, and I joined Rotary because I was the leading fundraiser and the leading volunteer recruiter for Metro United Way, and I needed a break. I needed a place to go that was safe for me. So I joined Rotary. That was a fundraising and a volunteer-driven organization, but I wasn't expected to be the one doing all the work. You see, I needed to do what I was asking this community to do, and that place was Rotary. It was here for me yesterday, and thank goodness when life happened to me in a way that I never could imagine, I stepped aside from Rotary, and I stepped aside from a lot of things. Thank goodness y'all waited for me and let me come back in the fold in 2012. God knows where we would have been, Ken, if I'd stayed in all those years. So as Rotarians, let me say this. I don't know if I meant how much damage I would have created or how many people I would have run off. I don't know what I meant by that, but Paul, Lisa, stay tuned. Here we come to the finish line. All right, as Rotarians, Yinka, Ole Yinka Babalola, our Rotary International President, he is asking each of us across the globe. There are 45,000 presidents just like me gathering in this month. Yeah. There's 1.175 or so members. We're looking for 1.2 million members globally. And he is asking, will you tell your story as a Rotarian? will you tell your story as a Rotarian? That's his vision and that's his dream. He says it's the stories that humans tell and share is what connects us. Because the stories are the narrative that tells the listener what you value. That was a little heavy for me when he said that, because I've told some stories, Tracy, that I'm not so sure I want that to be the picture that you hold of me. So just think about that. And together we'll build a world with lasting impact. I really believe that. We can do this, Rotarians. Yes, we can. Together we'll create a great connected community for all. Together we'll create lasting impact. And yes, please follow the 4-way test and all the things you say, think, feel, and do. And one more. I've added Barbara's top 3. This is that new thing you're supposed to do as a president. So I ask you, and I leave you with 3 questions. Ask yourselves these 3 questions every day. What do I want? What's the truth? And what am I willing to do to get it? Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to a great year. Thank goodness the very first question that Angela McCormick Bisig asked me is, do you need me to cut mine short? I said, absolutely not. I'll zip through mine in about 3 minutes. And she's looking at me right now going, girl, you did not do that. Okay, here we go. I get the pleasure and honor of introducing our guest speaker today, and I'm very excited to introduce everyone to the Kentucky State Supreme Court Justice, Angela McCormick Bisig. She was elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court in November of 22. And she serves the 4th Supreme Court District, which is Jefferson County. Justice Bisig has been a member of the Kentucky Judiciary for 23 years. She served in both district and circuit courts and chief judge of both terms. She is also one of 2 founding circuit judges in the Commonwealth who presided over cases of a newly formed business court. And Justice Bisig has worked as a juvenile court judge for many years. She's a founding member of the Restorative Justice Program, which currently serves to rehabilitate juveniles and bring healing to crime victims. She's also helped to establish a special program called the Enhanced Supervision Docket, providing court supervision of domestic violence offenders. She has also founded the Kentucky Jefferson County's only language and cultural immersion training for court system partners. Prior to her service on the bench, Justice Bisig served as an attorney for 13 years. She worked for 7 years as a prosecutor in the area of domestic violence and sexual assaults. She's also practiced civil law. Does anybody remember Brown Todd Hayburn? When I read that, ma'am, I thought, oh gosh, we've got a much younger group than we used to have years ago. Okay, for those of you that are wondering what I'm talking about, that is now, is it Frost Brown Todd? Do I have it right? Did they change things? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Brown Todd and Hayburn. Lacey knew all those guys. And Greenbaum Donald McDonald, she worked there as well. Justice Bisig is very involved in the community. She is on the board of directors of the Volunteers of America. She served many years on the board of directors of the World Affairs Council, regularly hosts international guests in her home, and she's also served on the boards of Dare to Care Food Bank, Center for Women, the Red Cross, Sister Cities of Louisville, and on the board of trustees of the University of Louisville. Justice Bisig was voted Judge of the Year. I don't think there's anything she has not been honored for or won, and by the Louisville Bar Association, not once. It was 2013. They circled back, they must have broke the bylaws, and they named her Judge of the Year a second time in 2020. I'm so proud of you for that. She was named Trial Judge of the Year in 2021 by the American Board of Trial Advocates. She was named the Kentucky Justice Association Judge of the Year in 2016, and she has also been named a Muhammad Ali Daughter of Greatness. She is married to Arnold Rivera. She has 3 adult children, the last of whom got engaged recently, and they'll all be married off, 3 young men, come October, and 2 fabulous stepchildren. Rotarians, please welcome Kentucky Supreme Court Justice Angela McCormick Bisig.
I don't guess I get a pen, Barbara.
You have to talk first.
Good afternoon.
It's going to be hard to sustain that level of enthusiasm, but I'm really honored to be here today. And before I start my TED Talk on the Kentucky judiciary, let me congratulate the Rotary Club in the president that you have chosen to lead you forward. I've known Barbara for many years, and as we just all saw exemplified, she is enthusiasm and promise and motivation personified. So what a wonderful thing for our community. Barbara, I looked up when I was coming here to speak at Rotary. I actually spoke at Rotary Club many years ago with Tom Williams, who's here today, about our restorative justice program, but it's been a minute. So I looked up Rotary and was happy to see the International Rotary was founded by a lawyer. So since we're going to be talking about law and justice today, I appreciated Mr. Halliday, the beautiful blessing as we started. That was so appropriate for my remarks. But a lawyer named Paul Harris, and the core values of the Rotary Club were to network, build friendships, and serve the community. And I can't think of anybody better to lead those two endeavors, people coming together and networking and serving the community, than Barbara Sexton Smith. So congratulations to the Rotary Board. So all of us, and I would love to hear each of your stories, just this past weekend, celebrated 250 years as a nation. I'm old enough where I remember 1976. When we did our bicentennial. And for this past 250 years, I know many of you were probably in pools, at lakes, with family, eating barbecue. I had the honor to be over in France during our 250th, and their National Archives had a special exhibit with Gilbert de Montier, who you would know as the Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette, who was France's first ambassador here to the United States, and Lafayette, who was friends with George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, all of our founding fathers. And as I thought about my comments for Rotary today, I was really in the mindset of this 250-year anniversary of the foundation of our country, and mindful of my role that I am really in one of those branches that those founding fathers who were friends with Lafayette thought of. And in this exhibit, I was able to go and see in glass cases actual letters in his handwriting, in Lafayette's handwriting, that he had written to George Washington, saying, my dear general, and just writing out in his handwriting, in English, and some letters from him in France. And it made me think about, really in the scope of time, Paris was celebrating recently its 2000th year as a city. What a baby we are in this democratic experience. We really are a baby. I had a grandmother who I have her Ellis Island certificate. Her name was Anna Gast, and she came here from Germany, Passau, Germany, and she lived to be 105 years old. Now, she died when I was in college, but we called her Noni, and I knew Noni. I mean, Noni would show me how she made bread, and Noni would tell stories about coming over on a ship from Germany. And I started thinking, Noni lived 105 years. She lived through World War I, she lived through World War II. If she had a mother or a grandmother who had also lived 105 years, that would be straight back to the time of the establishment of our great nation. And it strikes me how soon that is, how recent that is. You tend to think it's ancient history, but it really isn't. And so I wanted to think through our democratic experience and my role in the judicial branch and talk with you a little bit today. Who is lawyers in the room? This is going to be a little, I know there's quite a few lawyers. It'll be a reminder for you. Some of it may be a little something you're used to hearing. But I wanted to talk about our judicial branch of government and its importance in this whole democratic experience. And I think in the comments or in my title, I said it's the quiet branch. And we really are the quiet branch of government. When I was growing up, I was very much a student government type. And you all are all business leaders, so you were probably student government types as well. Both in high school and college, I was involved in student government. I'm sure many of you were. And I used to think I wanted to maybe run for Congress or run for mayor or run for governor or be in one of the executive or legislative branches of government. And I had a course at U of L here with Dr. Paul Weber where we studied the court system. We studied judges, we studied the US Supreme Court, we studied our Supreme Court. And it really lit up something in me because we are the quiet branch. Some of you, and I know so many of you from board work and different organizations, some of you or many of you maybe would know that I was our Supreme Court Justice. I'm one of 7 that served the state, and you may or may not be able to name many other of those 7. And again, that's okay. We're the quiet branch. Why are we the quiet branch? Why do I say that? We're independent. When we run for office, we're nonpartisan. So we're out of the fray of, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican? We're not running on values of that nature. We don't make laws. As judges, we do not make laws. We don't decide what laws are going to govern our society. We don't enforce laws. We don't have a sword. We don't have the army. We don't have a police force to do our will. We don't have any of those things the other branches have. We don't have a purse. We don't tax citizens. We don't spend money as a judicial branch. We have to wait for problems to come to us. We don't give advisory opinions. We don't say, oh, what if this happened? This is the way the judges would rule. We have to wait till there's an actual problem or controversy to come before us in the judicial branch. We don't decide fake problems. In Federalist Paper 78, Alexander Hamilton said that the judiciary is the least dangerous branch of government because we are, by design, reactive. We are not proactive. We're not out there setting the agenda. That's why you pay less attention to who your judges are and what's going on, because we are reactive. So why would I say, given all that I just put forward, that we are a co-equal branch with our executive, with our mayor, with our governor, with our president, or a co-equal branch with our legislators, with our Congress, with our Metro Council? It's that power of judicial review. It's the power of judicial review that the judiciary possesses that was exercised in this country for the first time in a case you maybe have heard of from some law class called Marbury versus Madison. And it was the first time the judicial branch in the history of our country stood up to then James Madison, who was coming in as president, who enacted a new law basically packing the courts with judges who were Federalist judges as he was. And Mr. Marbury was one of those named judges stepping up to get his judicial form. And there was a lawsuit. And the Supreme Court said it would be unconstitutional for one branch of government to step in and overtake another branch by packing it with all of their supporters. And they struck it down. And it was such a new and novel thing that happened that it didn't happen again after that time for another 50 years. But that power of judicial review is what makes the judicial branch your safety net. We are your safety net. I always told my jurors when they came in my courtroom to serve that they could look at me like a referee in a ball game, in a World Cup tournament, since we're all having our mind on the World Cup. I am not for one side, I am not for the other side. I am there to make sure we play by the rules, that they're applied fairly and without bias to all of the parties. So our role is very different. And I want to give you just a couple of, I'm not going to get really granular, but a couple examples. These are all cases that our court has decided within the last 2 months. The kinds of issues that we as judges grapple with and balance. And then I want to tell you a little bit, because honestly, until I had been a judge sitting in a courtroom hearing trials for 23 years when I ran to be on your Supreme Court. And I didn't really even know, seeking the office, how they process their work, how they work together, how they issue opinions and decisions. So I want to give you a little bit of inside baseball on that today as community leaders and business leaders, that I want to understand how our branch functions. Just some examples of cases that we decided just recently that go with that balance of power. The first one, as I told you, there are 7 of us on the court, was a 7-0 decision. So all 7 justices voted. There was a piece of legislation that was going to be funding charter schools here in our state, basically taking public dollars to fund private schools. And the court struck down 7-0. Our Constitution says common education dollars are to go to the public school system. And before you think, wow, that seems like a lot of power of the court, that you can tell the legislature, there is a way to do that. If communities wanted to do that, you would have to amend the Constitution. There actually was, within the last couple of years, an initiative on the ballot to change the Constitution to allow that. It was voted down in all 120 counties in the Commonwealth. But just still looking at those difficult decisions, giving deference to the legislative's ability to determine our laws, but looking at our constitutional documents that say our public dollars should only go to fund public education. The next one was an Open Records Act interpretation case. You all may or may not know, if you are a public commission or board or agency, you are subject to the Open Records Act, meaning the people have the right to know the public's business. And this case got a lot of traffic and social media and a lot of attention because there was a Fish and Wildlife Board for the Commonwealth that had volunteer board members. I mean, we've all served on boards and commissions that had volunteer board members, and they weren't given a state email. So an open records request went to this Fish and Wildlife Board, and they were seeking the private cell phones of those board members, thinking that probably by text message and other methods on their private cell phones, they may have been conducting the fish and wildlife business. They refused to give over the cell phones, and litigation ensued. And our court, and this was a closer decision, one of our justices was recused, so it was a 4-2 decision. And again, this got a lot of attention because the statute for open records says you can get information that's in the custody and control of the state agency. And as a court, we were discussing, your cell phone, who's going to be the arbiter of what on your phone should come under the umbrella of your government work and what's private. We all have our banking information, pictures, messages we've sent our friends and family. But I'm giving that as an example of that really delicate balance between the necessity of openness and transparency in our government institutions, but also if you are a board member and all of a sudden you're thinking, I have to turn my cell phone over to some third party to look through and get information. Do you see the difficulty in balancing those two very important competing interests? 4-2, the court decided that the cell phone did not need to be turned over. I don't think all is lost for openness and transparency. You can make rules about how you conduct business if you're on a government board, but ultimately we did not require the citizens to turn over their cell phone information. And again, that was a fairly controversial ruling. The last one I'm going to talk about also was the legislature passed a rule that switched the governor's appointment powers on executive boards and commissions, like the State Fair Board, like the Government Ethics Commission, that switched the appointments that comprise those boards to other members of the state constitutional officers, like the auditor, like the state treasurer. And the governor sued, saying, I am ultimately a core responsibility under our Constitution for the executive branch of government. How can I do that if I don't have appointment authority on these boards and commissions? Again, a very tough balancing situation that has to occur by the court. We ruled in favor of that particular legislation undermining the governor's ultimate executive authority. It was 4-3. So it was a very close decision among the court members, and you can imagine the level of debate. I'm giving you those more granular cases so that you can see the type of issues at this level that we grapple with. But also, if you're just wondering, what kind of work does my Supreme Court do, and how do we even get work? We get our work in one of two ways. So we have cases that we call them matter of right. They are cases that we're going to see as the Kentucky Supreme Court because we must. That's anybody in the entire state who's convicted of a criminal offense who has 20 years or longer to serve. They are going to get an automatic review by the Supreme Court. So we see all of those cases. We also see any lawyer or judicial discipline cases for a review. And many of you may be familiar with the area of law called workers' compensation. It's a way for workers to be paid if they're injured on the job. Part of that statutory structure is those cases automatically come to us. So that's our must-do workflow. And then we have, similar to the United States Supreme Court, discretionary review, which means when a case is decided, any kind of case over anything, family law, a speeding ticket, when anything is decided, they can petition the Supreme Court for us to review what happened at the lower courts, trial court level, at the Court of Appeals. And we review all of those petitions and decide what cases we will hear. That's discretionary review because we don't have to. If we don't see an error, if we think the lower courts got it right, or we don't think it's something we need to step in and speak to, we don't take those cases. Those cases tend to be what we join together to have oral argument. So by design, your Supreme Court is made up from 7 individuals that are elected from all around the state. I'm elected here in Jefferson County, but I hear cases from the entire state. All of my other colleagues have a conglomeration of many counties that they represent, from Pike County all the way over to Fulton County to Kenton County in the north, down to the Bowling Green region and then the Lexington region in the center. They're all a conglomeration. We're still the biggest. I haven't convinced them that I get 2 votes as a result of that. But I could try because we have a few more citizens. But I'm pleased they've never tried to split our county. But because we come from all over the state, we gather 1 week every month together. We are together 1 week every month. Day 1, we decide administrative matters for our courts. Day 2 and 3, we are horse trading and debating about what ought to happen on those matter of right cases I told you about. And then the next 2 days, we're sitting in oral argument on the cases that we accepted, as I told you, discretionary review. As soon as we have that oral argument, which you can watch real time on KET, any month you want, we go back into a room together, we sit around a conference table and we vote. We take turns who votes first. Sometimes I like to vote first because I like to kind of set the stage and say why I think legally X or Y should happen. Sometimes if you're really struggling with the case, it's nice to vote last because you hear what your colleagues think about a case. But we all go in there and vote. And you might be really good and hopping mad at somebody who doesn't agree with you on an issue on any given day, but guess what? There's another case coming, and there's another case coming, and there's another case coming. So we all have to learn to work together despite our disagreements, all 7 of us. We all look out different windows because we're coming from different areas of the state. We all have different legal formations. You heard Barbara talk about mine. I came up as a civil lawyer, then as a criminal prosecutor, and then I've been a trial judge for the bulk of my legal career. We have several folks on the court that have never been a trial judge, so you really see a difference in the way you process information in cases. Some of our court members were longtime Court of Appeals judges, which I never was. So we bring, by design, a different perspective to these cases. I am going to try to keep it tight, Barbara, but what I want to say about the judicial branch of government is it is there to make sure that our laws are applied equally and fairly. And I think an independent judiciary is a really critical part of a healthy democracy. If you want to look at places where they're trying to tear a democracy down, step 1 is attack your judiciary. In the country of Poland, when they started their democracy in the 90s, when Russia left, attacking the judiciary and trying to pack it, kind of like our Marbury versus Madison case, was the first thing that happened. If you remember in Israel, when Benjamin Netanyahu first took office, he put in something in place trying to stack the judiciary, and the citizens came out and supported the judiciary. But we're quiet, but really essential and really important. And just by the nature of the kinds of cases I'm telling you we're struggling with and that we have to write opinions on, you can see how we're a critical component in how this whole huge wheel of democracy turns. In our Bill of Rights, it starts with we the people, all of us, in order to form a more perfect union, a better place for us all to live, work, and be, which is your goal as Rotarians. And then it gives a laundry list of the things we're going to do to reach that goal. And number one on the laundry list is establish justice. Establish justice. 2 is ensure domestic tranquility. I think of that as our police force and keeping our streets safe. 3 is provide for the common defense. That's our military, keeping our borders safe, keeping our country safe. 4 is promote the general welfare. I think of that as healthcare, education, the environment, all the different things that we care about. But when you think about it, I don't think it's by accident that number 1 is establish justice. Because you don't live in a place where you think everybody has to play by the rules. There is a rule of law. There's somewhere I can go for redress if I have a business dispute or if a law is broken. All the other issues we care about, I don't think can be as fully played out. So we are the quiet branch, but I believe we are very important to this 250-year democratic experience that we are all a part of. And again, if you look at a worldwide basis, we're still babies. We're still making it work. We're still going along. We're at a time where we, at times, can be seen to be divisive against each other. But as I said, even on our court of 7, and even with all of us coming from different backgrounds, it's interesting how we have different alliances depending on what the case is. The same 4 and 3 of us aren't always in the same place when we don't all agree. And there are cases, as I told you, the first one, that's even really controversial, but all 7 of us are on the same page. And I think that's where you know there has to be a rule of law. So I appreciate you all going on this little dive through our Kentucky judiciary with me today. I respect so much, so many of you I have worked with in various roles in this community. And I know all the beautiful work and volunteerism and serving on boards that you all have done. So I'm just one of you. Today was the day I could share with you my corner of the world.
All right.
All right, so fellow Rotarians, we promised you we would bring great speakers throughout our next year, and so you are leading the way and setting the bar very high. So in keeping us on schedule, we have a few minutes left. However, fellow Rotarians, we do know that if you need to leave or choose to leave at 1 o'clock, you may do so. However, if anyone has a question that you feel you really need to ask on this microphone, please come to the microphone and do that. There are no speeches whatsoever, no comments whatsoever. You state a question, and then Justice Bisig will stand here with me at the end of the meeting at our time together and answer other questions. However, let's go. First question. And I'm going to play Sergeant at Arms.
I got you, Barbara. Thank you so much for being here, Nick Garner, the Mighty Corporation. Thank you so much for speaking to this. So as Rotarians, one of the things we have to consider in all of our actions, things, say, and do, is whether or not anything is of benefit to all. A deep concern to me is that access to justice often comes down to whether or not the aggrieved parties have enough resources to pay lawyers to get access to that justice. Can you talk a little bit about how you try, or what you think might help address the resource disparity and its access to justice in the courts as a result? Thank you.
Sure. No, that's a really good question. And for those of you who aren't in the legal field, access to justice refers to everyday citizens who may not have a pocket full of money to hire a lawyer, still being able to avail themselves of legal relief when necessary. Our Supreme Court has an Access to Justice Commission that we've established that's had several goals. My colleague from Northern Kentucky, Justice Michelle Keller, chairs that. One initiative we've done just within the last 2 years is starting legal form portals in our state law libraries, manned by volunteer lawyers, where you could go if you have a divorce that's not overly complicated or you want to file a claim, you can talk to a volunteer lawyer and they can direct you to forms at least to get you in the door, to be able to have your case heard or understood. I can tell you in our family courts, family law is the one area I never sat as a judge or practiced in large part as an attorney, but in our family courts, we have, I don't want to guess a percentage, but we have a very large percent of individuals who come before the courts pro se, unrepresented, and the courts are used to accommodating. There are advocates there to explain what's going on, but it continues to be an issue. Not only can litigation be, and those of you in business know, take a lot of time and be costly, to have legal representation throughout a couple of year appellate process is difficult. And as I said, we always need to be mindful of that and as a court, and I think we are putting programs in place and we can always continue.
Very enlightening, thank you. That was fascinating. Quick question, I realize this is maybe above your pay grade in a sense, but I don't know what you get paid, but my point is, you're talking about the judicial system. Could you give us your assessment of today's judicial system, maybe specifically at the federal level? And everything will stay in this room.
This is really quiet, just among us. Now, there's a couple of developments that I don't think are healthy. One is the media, the way the media reports on the judiciary these days, both locally and nationally. They tend to want to try to, first, it's not been said, but they are guessing whether they perceive you to be more Democratic or Republican, more left or right. And then we had a very high profile case, again, involving the Jefferson County school system. And when Louisville Public Media reported on it, one of my colleagues who voted a certain way, they put in a label. And I don't think that's appropriate. Almost routinely when the United States Supreme Court rules on anything, they will say the 4 liberal justices, the 3 liberal justices, the 4. I don't think that's helpful. I don't like that the country is starting to look at the judiciary that way. If you look just a few years ago, when many of our justices were affirmed to be on the court, they had almost unanimous support within the United States Senate in their confirmation hearings. And just like the country has gotten somewhat divided, I think it leaks into the judiciary, and then it builds a lack of trust and confidence. In my earlier remarks, I don't have a military that I can send out and say, enforce the order that I just wrote. What I have is you all believing in our government and believing that the judiciary has an important role. The other thing I have seen in the reporting is that the Supreme Court will make a decision, and then the media will report, well, we'll see whether or not they'll follow that, as though it's an option. In my mind, following a judicial ruling, it's part of our government. If you sign up to be in the government, it's not an option. Whether you're going to follow that ruling, because we don't have a police force, we don't have a military. That's the way the government works. As long as we're in our lane, we're not making law, we're not doing something we're not supposed to, I don't know that that's a legitimate question, and yet it's asked. So there's some things that I think undermine our neutrality, but I also think there's things that you can look to and point to that we still continue to provide what we need to for our government. Never going to be perfect.
Thank you so much, Judge Bisig. Really exciting and very interesting. I may have a follow-up question to Dan about recent developments that, particularly at the federal level, seem a little controversial, particularly the use of the shadow doctrine. than opinion, decisions that are not supported by any opinion. Does the Kentucky Supreme Court have a shadow docket?
So again, for those of you non-lawyers, a shadow docket case is when the court, they see maybe an exigent circumstance and they want to get a ruling out. So they rule on a matter without a fully formed legal opinion. It may not have authorship. It's just a memorandum opinion of the court, so you don't know who wrote it, and they're really not giving you much in the way of reasons for why they did what they did. We don't have a shadow docket in the way the U.S. Supreme Court does. I know we have had some appellate matters, and they're rare, be on an expedited basis where we have, but since in my tenure on the court, I don't think we have ever ruled on an issue without providing a supporting legal memorandum. So loosely, I would say no. Could it never happen? One of the wonderful things, and my lawyers in here can back me up about being in the law, is even if you've been doing it, since the late 80s like I have, you see something new, things come before you can't get over, wow, I never saw this. Even in sitting in criminal trials, you think those issues, those evidentiary rulings, everything that happens, at some point, you would reach a point where you've seen it all, and you never do. So could there be something we would need to issue an emergency ruling and then do our reasoning later? It's possible, and I think we would reserve the right to do that if we needed to, but we don't. And I think it should be really rare for any court, because openness and transparency and seeing why you're doing what you're doing is a key part of what we do. I mean, anything we do in our courts in the Commonwealth of Kentucky is recorded audio and visual. If you were just of a mind, you could go down and pull any tape from any courtroom, including any oral argument we have, and watch real time what we're doing. And then having our legal opinions to back up what we're doing is very important. It's what I spend the bulk of my days doing, is writing. Okay.
Judge Bisig, thank you very much. I'm Tom Bonert, and I have been curious for so many years about the role of a judge and the actions of a judge related to what I understand is your primary responsibility, interpreting the Constitution. And I'm confident that there were some times that you find that you would like to see a case ruled differently, but you read the Constitution differently also. How do you resolve that conflict?
That's such a good question. I'm glad you asked, because I love talking about this. As a judge, when I look at a case, just my own process, and you hear words like, are you a traditionalist, are you an originalist, the way I process, and I'm happy to share it, I read the pleadings in a case. So pleadings are, here's what happened, here's what we want, and then basically the response to that. And then you have a process called discovery where information is exchanged. And I'm looking at all of that to make decisions at some point. Either early on, we have mechanisms, you can make a motion to dismiss a case because there's no legal basis to bring it. You can make a motion to dismiss a case because it doesn't state a cause of action at all. Or a case is going to go all the way on either to have some kind of plea bargain settlement or a trial. At some point along that way, I'm looking at everything because I have to make a decision. First thing I usually do is just read everything and say in my mind, what ought to happen here? I call it my ought-to-meter. What ought to happen? What seems fair? What seems just? What seems right? What does my ought-to-meter tell me? But guess what? You do not elect me to decide cases based upon my ought-to-meter. If you like me, you might be okay with that, but that's not why you elect me. You elect me to follow the law. So step 2 is you run it through the law machine. What does that mean? You're reading the Constitution if the Constitution is implicated. A lot of our cases, well, at core it always is, but a lot of our cases, there's other statutes, there's other jurisprudence. We have to follow the statutes and our prior opinions because we have that lovely concept of stare decisis. But I run it through the law machine. And the law machine gives me an outcome. This needs to happen. Your question is, what happens when your autometer says A is the right and just thing, and you run it through the law machine, and that says, guess what? B has to happen. Not A, B. What happens there? B. All day, every day. Now, before you feel crestfallen, I have to follow the law. And if you are a judge and you've never had an outcome of a case come in a way that maybe you wouldn't have picked, I would question whether you're following the rule of law, because you need to follow the law. You're not following what you think. Now, all is not lost because of a couple of concepts. One, if B happens, and boy, would a lot of people say the autometer is A, legislation needs to be passed to change that. And we can even put a heads up in our opinion. Whoa, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem what this was intended to do. That's one thing. Second thing, there's gray area. You know, if the law machine is clear, it's clear. Sometimes there's gray area. What does that word mean? How is this meant to be interpreted? I have found myself late in the night in Frankfurt at listening to cassette tapes of hearings, trying to figure out what the legislature meant when they enacted something. But when there's gray area, then maybe you think this needs to go closer to where my autometer said. So that's an issue. But if the law machine is clear, you follow it, and that's an area where the law needs to change. But the job is to follow the law, not do what I think, much as I might like to.
All right, thank you so much. So you asked me when we started if you were going to get one of our pins, and the pins are official Rotarian business. We would love to have you join Rotary at some point, but I have something that is even more special. We're going to give to you our official Rotary International Challenge coin. I know you know what those are, and that has the emblem of our founder, Paul Harris, and he founded this club as a lawyer in Chicago, Illinois in 1905, and the four-way test is on the back. When she raised her hand like this to answer a question just now, I have to tell y'all, I saw her watch. Her watch said like 5 o'clock or something. I said, surely we have not been here that long. Are you still on France time? I think you are, ma'am. Okay, so now you have one more task. We are now going to draw. We've been all waiting. This is everyone who gave to the Rotary Fund and the Rotary Foundation between July 1 and June 30 this last year. All right, the lucky winner is... And they're going to, oh, this person's going to get 1,000 Paul Harris points. That's a really cool thing. I'll tell you about that later. Mary Ann Thornton. And fellow Rotarians, you can scan the QR code on your table if you want to go ahead and make your contributions for this coming year so we can get a head start on Rotary Fund and Rotary Foundation. All right. Judge, thank you. You may sit down. I'll join you in a minute. We have another one quick minute announcement from the President-elect, Craig Mooney. Craig?
Okay. Join us next Thursday here at the University Club to hear David Beck share his thoughts on economic development. A term that gets tossed around in boardrooms and budget hearings, but what does it actually mean? He'll discuss how the events, conventions, and crowds that fill a venue ripple straight into hotels, restaurants, jobs, and tax revenue. Come find out why bringing people together is one of the biggest opportunities in Kentucky. Please RSVP by Monday at noon or scan the barcode here on the screen to get registered for next week's event. Thank you.
Okay, all right. If you wondered if we were going to be timely and relevant in the news, that is a perfect example. And I talked to David and he's so excited. Guests, if you want to learn more about Rotary, please hop over here where the beautiful salmon colored jacket with the Rotarian Craig Sherman can chat with you a little bit about that. And if you're wondering why the sparkle tennis shoes are up here, they're mine. And I was too short, couldn't reach the microphone, so I had to change them for my high heels. We are adjourned.